I'm just going to make a start by introducing myself. Probably half of you in the room know who I am. So my name's Helen Crampin, and I'm one of the innovation leads for the Healthy Aging Challenge. So I currently lead on the Investor Partnerships program that we run, and also the Social Ventures program that we're running. So I'm really excited to be here. This isn't one of my projects, so I'm going to apologise in advance that I don't know all the in-depth details about the project, which is why I'm actually just going to let them introduce themselves, tell us about the project, and then we'll go on from there. But what I want this to be is just more of a discussion, if that's all right. So feel free to put your hands up. I know we've been encouraged to use Slido, but because we've got such a small room, I think we can use a microphone, and actually probably but I like it, so I'm keeping it. And I think the people online actually can't hear me if I haven't got the microphone. So yes, somebody's waving frantically at the back there. Don't do that. So actually, if you have got a question, I'll come round with the microphone. So we're going to be exploring how working collaboratively is good for developing products, services, whatever it is you're doing. And actually, are there any downsides to working collaboratively? I think will be interesting. There's got to be some difficulties, I'd say, some barriers when you're bringing different types of groups together, because different types of groups have different types of agendas, and that's something we'll be exploring. So it'll be really interesting to get everyone else's perspective on that. And again, are there any downsides to working collaboratively? I think that's something that I would like everybody to think about. Okay, so I'm just going to hand over to Clara first, please.
Yes, hi everyone, I'm Clara Sbraccia. I'm here representing Chimera. We are the project leads in a project funded by Innovate UK. Our project is called Misfit, and we are looking at how technology, research, and appropriate sportswear can support older women in keeping active and continue to take part in exercise. Chimera comes into the project with our wearable technology. That's what we specialize in. So we put sensors into clothes. For this particular project, it's going to be leggings. And we're designing leggings that will support older women in sports by looking at how the lower limbs are moving. And together with me, we've got Emilia here from Idle Sports. So I'm going to hand over to her.
Lovely, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Emilia Fennell. I'm serving with Idle Sports as the Sports Science Research Manager and the Junior Project Manager on this project overall. Idle Sports is a brand creating sportswear specifically for females. So it's perfect on this project, as this project's target population is women over the age of 50 who are active and also not active. Yeah, we'll hand it over to Sharon.
Hi everybody, I'm Sharon Dixon. I'm an Associate Professor at the University of Exeter. We're one of the research partners on this project, where we're looking at supporting in terms of validating some of the technology that's being developed, and then also really interested in looking at how that technology is going to be applied. I'm a sports biomechanist, so I'm interested in measuring movement, measuring forces, linking that with healthy aging, reducing injury, and so on. So we're looking at both supporting the validation of the technologies that are developed, and then how we can apply that, and specifically to the development of footwear to support healthy aging. I'll hand over to Owen now.
Hello everybody, so my name is Owen Wright. I am an innovation consultant at the UK National Innovation Centre for Ageing and work with our sister organisation Voice. So Voice is a community of citizens. It was predominantly older adults, but we're now looking through the life course. So we have a collection of older adults working with partnerships with other universities across the UK and globally. And as part of this project, we're obviously facilitating the access to those citizens to help drive insights, connect the dots, really embed them throughout the whole research process as well, helping us to craft surveys, helping us to understand where the products and services can meet the needs of the people that we're looking at specifically for this project.
Thank you very much. That actually went really fast, didn't it? So I should have made them do presentations, but anyway, sorry about that. So I've got a few pre-prepared questions that I'm going to ask, and then we'll open it up to the audience. There's no questions coming in online just yet, so come on, guys. Questions. So the first question, and I think I'll open it up to everybody, and you can each answer it Is that okay? Yeah, okay. So how do you maintain effective communication within a multidisciplinary team like your own, would you say?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start as the lead partner. I think one of the most important things is for me to over-communicate. These guys will know I shoot like 100 emails a week, probably. I'm constantly emailing them, I'm constantly calling them or messaging them and making sure that we communicate with each other, because that's the most important thing, that everyone is in the loop. We have a Teams channel, for example. We make sure that everything is written, everything's documented, so I can always point people to the right direction when needed. I think that, you know, as the lead in the project, it's very important that we over-communicate and that we overshare as much information as possible so everyone is in the loop.
All right, yeah. Same kind of thing. I think one of the easy things is it's kind of like families as well. Your own family does ways, like Christmas, your own way, and you hear about a friend's family and they do it completely different. And so at IDA, with our team, we're like always pretty much on the same page. But then when you go bigger and you go working with other teams, you might find, oh, they're on the page ahead, they're in a completely different book, stuff like that. So making sure that you kind of realign at various points. You will be on different pages at some times. You are in completely different companies with completely different overarching goals. So making sure at times then you get on a Zoom call, you get IRL, and you get on that same page in the same book, or at least put your book in their book. But yeah, I think that's how I explain it.
I like that. I think one thing that's been really strong with this, because at the beginning we don't know each other. Even the partners that we developed the proposal with are not necessarily the same personalities that you end up working with. And something that's worked really nicely with this is that we've all been able to go to the same place right at the beginning of the project. We all went to Newcastle. We met each other. You develop those personal relationships, and that really helps with the communication, I think. So when we've been going to different parts of the country, collecting data, which I'm sure you'll hear more about, we've got to know each other really well. We have the formal Teams and so on, but we also have a WhatsApp group, and we have photographs we send to each other with ideas, and keeping communication quite informally as well as having the formal side of things. And I think that's been really important.
Yeah, I think I'd just reiterate kind of what the team said. As Sharon said, that kind of the foundational beginning aspect of it with the proposal stage, and really understanding what each partner's role within the project is, but how that cross-cuts across the different partners as well. So you have a grounded knowledge at the beginning, because it's kind of like working in any team. I work with the team at Nika and Voice, but I still apply the same principles to this group, and to be able to facilitate that and understand the different areas that we bring our expertise to, but also what we can do to facilitate that is really important. But then having a lead and project manager is Clara, kind of really helping to engage us all and bring us all together, I think is really important. She's done a great job of facilitating that, and I think it's meant that the project's moved along in the way that it has, and I think it's been really successful because of that.
That's really interesting. I think one of the things I'd just like to go back to is when you talked about going around collecting the data. So there must be some real challenges around that, and how you carve up what each person does, as it were. So is that where you would come into the group and say, you do this, you do that, you do this, or is it more of a collaborative thing? I want to do this, I want to do that, or is there something else going on? I suppose this goes sort of right down to the basics of what kinds of tools or processes you are using on a daily basis to work through those types of issues. That, you know, when you work for a company like I do, we've got hundreds, millions, if not millions, tools and processes. But I guess you've had to invent them yourselves, and you know, to try and come up with ways to manage how to do that. So yeah, interesting to explore that a bit more.
Yeah, so we are a startup, so as you said, a lot of it is kind of we learn on the job in a way. I think for us it's very collaborative, so if we see that there's an event that we want to go to, or if IDA gets invited to something and thinks that it's good for the project, then we all go and do our part. There has been times where these guys have gone and we couldn't make it, and I know I can trust them to go and do it. You're laughing, but it's not always a given. And yeah, and it's part of that collaborative, going back to the question, and making sure that everyone comes with ideas, and I know that we can trust each other to take that away, and everyone knows what the role is in some ways, and I know that sometimes it's part of me having to step back and let them lead the thing, especially when it comes to research and scanning feet and all of that. There's nothing that I can really do with that. But how do I support that, and how do I make sure that I'm still relevant and I'm still there for the team? I don't know if you guys want to add anything.
Yeah, I can add something, because I think that team part is really good in being flexible. And as a bit more context, one of the key things we've been doing is collecting foot shape data with a foot scanner from older active women that are participating in sports. So we started off at a football tournament for over 35s, and we collected a lot of data for a sport called pickleball. The guys over here from IDRA as well have been heavily involved, or instrumental in that. And we have had questionnaires, surveys for people to complete, and physically had the foot scanner there. And Clara has come to some of those events, and her main role has been cleaning the scanner. so you know, she's not dictating to us. You might feel like, as the project leader, that responsibility, but equally is the flexibility there that people just muck in and do what's required so that we can get done what's needed on the day.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting comment around she's not dictating, because that is actually, I would say, one of the challenges in running a project like this. You have to have a project lead. When does that project lead become the boss? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when you're obviously you're all from different projects, and actually, has there been any moments where there has been conflict, where you've thought, hang on a minute, I know more than you, or I don't want you to tell me what to do? Has there ever been that, or?
Sharon just got a bit mad at me this morning.
I was going to mention that.
So the foot scanner is not easy to transport. You might have seen us bringing a big cardboard box. I initially tried to go up the stairs and then realised elevators exist. But we brought that in. Sharon drove it all the way from Exeter because that's its home. And I mentioned today, because at the pickleball tournaments we've been to, it's been like, right, come on, let's go. We've got more than 200 feet scanned, so we are on it with getting these feet scanned. And here we're like, well, I said, we'll be a bit more casual, like we won't be, getting people, get on the scanner. And Sharon took that a bit the wrong way and said, I didn't bring this scanner all the way from Exeter. I said, that's not what I meant. But yeah, just dialing in those emotions when those do happen and stuff like that. Very important, and communication obviously being key.
Well, we still need feet. Yeah, I haven't had my breakfast yet.
Needed a tea first.
Yeah, we want to show off what we're doing, and I think that's quite important. But equally, I do agree.
So if you've got a chance, come get your feet scanned. We'd love to have them. But yeah, I think on that note, I think from a project lead perspective, in certain scenarios, the project lead shifts in a way. So you've obviously got Clara is the project lead. She's on us getting documents in on time, but then at pickleball tournament we're getting the scanner from Sharon's car. Sharon is the project lead at that point, right? So she's telling us, right, all hands on deck, let's get this going, let's get this out. We need power, stuff like that, where that role can shift at times, and it's not always a stable role.
Another challenge, I think, which I just picked up on, is geographical kind of distance. Mm-hmm. You're all nodding. Now, obviously, because of COVID, we've tended to actually, the geographical problems aren't what they used to be, are they? Because we do so much on Zoom. But, what are your kind of perspectives on that? Because I don't know where you all are based, but it sounds as if you are quite far from each other. So
we've got Exeter to Newcastle.
Yeah.
With us kind of based in London. But do you want to start on that bit?
Yeah, so I think it's geographically it can be a challenge, because especially in startups everyone does tend to be remote. So me and Emilia are based in London, but for example Dean and Nicola are in different parts of the country. And then we have Sharon at Exeter, we have Owen and Voice based in Newcastle. So all of our focus groups tend to happen on the northern side of the country. So we all have to kind of move and travel quite far. But I think because as Sharon said, we've also created those personal relationships. it's kind of exciting to travel all together and meet in a specific place, whether that's Newcastle, Norwich, or whatever. And it's kind of nice to meet in person sometimes, because there are certain things that just are a lot harder online, I feel.
And that was my next question. What do you think the physical contact is way more important as a project?
Yeah, I enjoy the travel so much. My last role, so I'm also like a sports biomechanist. So Sharon's kind of my advisor there, but I was in a lab environment before. I went into the office every day, and I switched into this role, and I was working from home in London, and it was completely different, so shifting was very difficult, but then having those face-to-face, traveling and seeing the team was so important to staying grounded in just the role in general, and then collaboration on the team as well. The travel has been such a great aspect of the project, to be able to meet in different places and get different, not only for the team, but get different kind of communities that we get to interact with. Because people up in Newcastle, I learned how to understand a Geordie accent. And then, we're down in Exeter, and it's completely different, when we're doing testing in the lab and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to ask a little bit about how, so there's research, obviously there's a big research element here. So how do you approach the challenge of integrating research into a project? Because, I've worked in projects like this, startups like this, where there's been a research element, there's been the commercial element. Actually, the commercial element always takes precedence, which it shouldn't. But have you kind of come across that type of challenge, or how do you integrate the research into the project, or does it just fit naturally?
I'll start and then I'll pass over to Sharon. But from my perspective, research was always, I wouldn't say that business was over research in this particular project. It's kind of a way to validate everything that we've done up until now. So the way University of Exeter comes in specifically for the project is also to validate the technology that we create. So that's a very important, heavy part of the project, because without validation, we could be selling something and claiming something that's not really true. So for me, it's the same kind of way. I don't know about you, Emilia.
Yeah, just quick point, and I'll pass to Sharon, but we're doing things that need research. We need to research women in this age group, and it's necessary. We can't market it before we have this research. And I've always been very passionate about enhancing and improving the amount of research out there for women in general and females. So I think that's just such a pivotal part of this project. We won't be able to move forward without that research at the core.
Yeah, it integrates really well, I think, in this project in particular. For example, the footwear is just one part of the project. We're going around collecting foot shape information that's very, very detailed. And from a research perspective, we want to understand how foot shape differs for different age groups. And that may have a lot of implications, and we can do that in a very detailed way using quite advanced statistical methods and so on. From IDA's point of view, there are some key measures they want from that data set to inform the development of footwear lasts that you build the shape of a shoe on. And they'll perhaps only be a small number of the key measures that represent the foot shape that will be needed. So we've got the big data set that we can do research with that's useful to a much wider audience, but then we've got the specific bits we can take from that and give very quickly to IDA to inform the shape of the footwear. So it seems to integrate really well. That's just one part. We've got the Chimera part looking at the leggings, and that we're going to monitor movement and the importance of validating that technology. And then there's also all the surveys in understanding what activity people are doing, what barriers there are to activity, and what footwear they wear at the moment, whether that's a problem getting comfortable footwear that they can do activity in. Is it available? What don't you have? So there's lots of things we can do from a research perspective that allow us to understand a lot about the population, and then there are specific parts that the commercial side can work with to inform what they're doing. So it does seem to work well.
Yeah. And obviously I don't know who is in the room, what kind of projects you are involved with, but it would be really good if we get a chance just to understand if anyone has had challenges that these guys obviously haven't had around how to integrate the research into a project. And I'm guessing there have been challenges for people in the room, because it's really difficult to manage and drive a project especially a project like this. So if we get a chance, we'll try and explore.
Sorry, can I carry on? Yeah, I had a question. Just wanted to, I guess, pull that thread a little bit more. And I wondered whether your success in being able to embed the research within the sort of wider project and value its impact to the commercials, is that because everyone in the team has a really clear understanding of where the kind of stopping point is? Do you get what I mean? So if the research wanted to carry on and sort of think, oh, well, we could find a little bit more information, actually they really understand that at this point we think we've got enough to get going, because there is a commercial imperative that we get there and, make money, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very valid point, because as you were saying, with research it's very easy to take it a step further and go down a rabbit hole. And so I think the fact that we have an equal balance of commercial and research partners, I think that definitely helps to keep the focus.
I think that's the great part about being cross-functional, is we can carry on IDA Sports, we can work with the factories, get started making last footwear, and Sharon can keep going down the rabbit hole for all I care. So, you can keep going. You've got that data now, so you can have that to then get insights from that and develop insights and produce those insights for more companies out there to then reference that data. If we publish that literature, then all of these companies can reference that, and they've got a backing to then start developing products based off of.
Yeah, I think we have to understand that we're within a constraint anyway, so having somebody go off and do something a little bit more could throw the collective timescales and what we can achieve together off. So it's kind of sense checking each other against that, and just being accountable for your own objectives within it, to make sure that you're kind of not going beyond that remit without a collective understanding that we agree on that one angle, I suppose, as well.
Unfortunately, my Slido's gone off. So I can't see if there's any online questions. There weren't, so... Oh, we've got a question. An audience question. Yay.
Thanks, Helen. My background's orthotics and prosthetics, but I actually stay about credit, so I can talk about all that. Yeah, I'm well done for all speaking and sitting in the same room with other educators, which it's very important, so well done. I'm coming from, there's a profession in the States called Pedorthics, which I presume I even know, perhaps I don't, which is basically footwear, fitting footwear, clinical retail mix. You obviously got your parameters for the research and the combined research. Where does the consumer product go? Where's the next stage for you all, or is that not something, perhaps not something for this forum, but where's the stage of development TRL10 when you're actually getting out there? Is there a market in the UK for what you're doing, or is that not something you're looking at?
Yeah, we're examining the market kind of in the whole process. We're doing user and human discovery as we go. So all of these tournaments we've been at, we've been kind of using pickleball as a use case, because I think it's, so 50% of the players of pickleball are women, and then about 75+% of those are over the age of 50. And that is our target population with the Healthy Aging project we're on. So we have seen like a direct, even with Pickleball England, they've got huge strategic plans to grow and become a governing body as well. So that's going to be our use case of getting into that market and talking to these women. We've heard this need. So we're already doing that kind of market discovery here in the UK. In the US as well, there's export options. We already produce women's football boots, and so we've got a wholesaler there who's already interested in pickleball, because in the US pickleball is like on steroids. It's mad there. So, I think it will continue to scale, and we're using it as a use case, the sport, because it is perfect for getting this age group active and staying active, and it's got that social aspect that we've heard about from speakers this morning as well. That's so important in the lives as well. It's not just fitness for health and all of that. It's also, keeping people engaged socially as well. So from a market perspective, that's kind of where we're headed currently from an IDA. I don't know if that answers your question. or feel free
Yeah,
to
no,
say anything.
I think this is a nascent industry. I think this is. I think longevity, people being active over 50, over 40, over 45. I think it's nascent. I think it's all still forming. I think we've talked to the BGS about it, haven't we? In terms of the British Geriatric Gerontology Society, have been talking about business and trying to get things. There's that nascent. It's forming together. It's I know Colgate. I tried to put out a 50+ toothpaste and it didn't work.
Right.
But in terms of what you're doing, keeping active, it's where. And I suppose the question is, where do people go? But that's not for you guys, because you're forming what you're doing, and well done. And I look forward to looking at the research. I'm going to come over and look at your foot scanner later.
Yes,
Thank you.
I have a question about so how does working with individual collaborators work? So
One second.
how does working with individual collaborators work? So if you're working with an organization, there would be backup plans. So sometimes if you have to work with people and their circumstances or their engagement rates change during the project, is there any general guidance as to how to deal with it and how to bring that back up as to a level that you need them to be at?
Yeah, so far we have worked with just a specific focus group of 10, and we're actually going to engage different types of people as part of the project, just to keep that momentum and try to understand from many different points of view of people exercising in different ways. And yeah, I think keep going to tournaments, to sports events, being there. That's how we keep the momentum up, and that's how we engage users as well.
I think that the facilitation for us, Voice as an organisation, obviously we build a community which is trusting of the environment which we provide them. So we get a lot of repeat engagement because of that opportunity that we afford people to be in a safe space, be in an area that they're comfortable with, but we're also working with the other organisations, bringing newer people on board through Voice has allowed us to cement that relationship. The important thing is to make sure that you are creating the space for them to engage when they want to as well. Understanding the context at which they can be able to afford to do that for whatever reason, making the remuneration right, understanding what kind of things motivate the individual to come along. It may be monetary, it might be something just purely voluntarily, but to really get a grasp of what an individual does and how they may engage is really important, because depending, and we may use the words like hard to reach groups, but it's really understanding what each group needs to be, give them affordance to do that repeat engagement. So if you really drill down into that, it should hopefully increase that quality of engagement.
I think a key aspect too is people are genuinely really excited about this. Yeah. Everyone we talk to says this is a need. Women go through so many different phases of their life with childbirth, and they lose their touch with exercise. They're rearing children and they lose their touch, and then they try and come back is kind of what we found initially. And they want to come back. And so we want to not provide any more additional barriers for them to not come back. So having something that they can emotionally connect to is already something that is going to help continue to engage them as well.
I think it's a little bit easier as well, because there's the aspects of being able to touch and feel the things within this project as well, which is a little bit different. Physically being able to see the shoes, the product, using and getting to go on the foot scanner as well engages people. We had some great kind of conversations and things around that, and people really kind of build and get on board with that kind of thing as well.
Thanks. So I've got a couple of questions online now. So question about from David Wright. Women over 50s mentioned as a target user market. How did you actually gather the user data from such a diverse population in terms of biomechanics and abilities, and then decide what would be the core focus?
Sharon?
Well, there's some background work in terms of a Catalyst project where we've collected some movement data and can see from our work and from the literature that there are changes in how people move when they're in an older group, and we were looking at over 50s in that group compared to under 35s. So we've got that kind of information, but in terms of the project itself, it's from talking to people. So the focus has evolved. We didn't know we were going to look at pickleball at the beginning. Mm-hmm. For example, when the first data collection we did, when we collected we spoke to and collected foot scan data and did surveys with 82 people in one day at a football tournament in July, one of the hottest days. That we're all having those interactions with a group that I'm part of, so it's different, the conversations I will have perhaps to the other people, so it's important we bring that all together. And then Nicola from IDA found out about a pickleball tournament in Norwich, and that's what we did next. And then the conversations there were just so animated, and everyone was so passionate about what they were doing in terms of being able to participate in a sport that they were comfortable in, that they made lots of friends with. Without exception, everyone was so passionate that you could see that this was a sport that can really make a difference to people, but equally, a large proportion of those people were not wearing footwear that would be thought to be appropriate for their sport, and were reporting that they couldn't get comfortable footwear. And so that's how we've come to that focus. We didn't start off when we wrote the proposal and say we're going to look exactly at the people doing this sport. It's happened through the conversations that we've had, and repeatedly with it was 220 in terms of how many foot scans we've done, but the survey will be more, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I think additionally, the question kind of mentions like why this population, I guess, does it? And so again, I go back to that. There's no research on it, so we are providing that research. So we're not even there yet we haven't gotten people in the lab yet for finding out those biomechanical differences and all of that. So that's part of the project, is to see what are those differences. We're already seeing differences in the foot scans. Your feet get wider as you age. You have things like bunions and all of that. So how are you meant to wear a shoe that someone who's like 18 is wearing? So there's so many different confounding factors as well, and that's something we will continue to discover as we go.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's depressed me, because I did used to wear very high heels when I was younger, and I don't anymore, so thanks for that. So this was actually one of my questions, really interested about this, from Jackie online. So how did this collaboration actually first come together? So, finding the right partners to work with is really, really difficult, and actually you can make mistakes, I think, So you seem to have just, I don't know, have you hit lucky? Or, did you make a conscious effort? Did you meet people and think, no, they're not right for us? Was it a journey, or did it all just kind of fall into place really easily?
This is, it's a very good story, because we none of us have worked together before. It was actually one of our project partners that are not here today. They're called CPI. Chimera have worked with them before, and we were just chatting about perhaps applying for this funding. And then I was, in parallel, I was having a meeting with Sharon about this same competition, so we had a meeting all together. And that's when Sharon then was also having a parallel conversation, if I remember correctly, with IDA Sports about shoes and biomechanics. And then at the end, we said, okay, but we need to co-design. Where do we find the users? How do we get the users? And that's when Voice then came in. I don't know if I forgot something from the story.
No, I think that certainly summarises it. I mean, I literally saw IDA advertised in a women's football magazine and speculatively emailed the contact there, which is Laura, who's a co-founder of the company, who's not here at the moment because she's on maternity leave. I emailed her and she got back to me straight away and was like, yeah, we'd love to work with you. And then, as you say, parallel to that, we were speaking, and it's like, well, can we tie these things together to develop the Chimera product and then apply it to the development of footwear, and that's the way we're going. Yeah.
So there's definitely an element of luck, I think, involved.
Yes.
Probably.
Yeah. I think it's just genuine connections as well.
Yeah.
I mean, knowing our co-founder Laura, she gets her hands in everything, so she would have been in this,
Yeah, we've definitely got shared connections, because we've done work with CPI, we still work with CPI, so there's kind of just finding the one person to then connect you together. Yeah. But as you say, a little bit of luck in there, but I think kind of the alignment happens because we all do kind of have connections here and there.
Yeah. And I've got a general question, actually. This is just really a personal interest in a way. When you said that you found pickleball, kind of sounds like it was was that just luck, or were you? I mean, you were obviously looking for something. So, how did that happen? Sorry, you're not on the panel. Am I allowed to do this?
Tag team.
Just broken rules. Is it working? Yeah. So, hi, I'm Nicola from Ida Sports. So, basically, when we spoke about earlier being all over the country, I actually live right on the east coast. So, if anybody knows a little sleepy town called Lowestoft, which is right by the sea. So I live there, and we're kind of remote and away from a lot of mainstream sports and activities. I grew up a swimmer, so obviously I was surrounded by water, so I'm still a swimmer now. But having been involved in sport, sports development, coaching all of my life, I've got a lot of contacts as well, which is quite lucky. And then coming on board with IDA and the project, we were specifically looking for over 50s, where a lot of women tend to go, or what sports, what community bases they were going to. And within my contacts and coaching in the area, on the East Coast, pickleball is actually quite big. So I went down to a local club, which was called Galston Pickleball Club, and that's just on the border of Norfolk and Suffolk. And from there I met a fantastic lady called Jill Hack, and she's actually a national champion for over 50s. And she was so impressed with what the project was doing, and you know, she wanted to know more, so we got her on board, and then from there she then gave me a list of all the tournaments and things going on around the UK. So yeah, it was just kind of an opportunity not to miss. So we headed down to Norwich, and like Sharon said, that was just an absolute eye-opener for us in terms of how passionate people are about not just the sport, but about activity, movement again, and actually the community feel. The competitive element was almost taking out, and the enjoyment factor was back there, and I think that was the key thing for us. So yeah, long story short, that is how we got to Norwich and to the pickleball route.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you.
And I know I have asked this question, but I don't know if, well anyway, I'm going to ask it. So obviously this is aimed at women. Men engage less with physical activity as they get older. It's just a thing, they just do. So have you got plans to, in the future, think about men over the age of 50, or is your focus, do you think, always going to be women?
Yeah, that's the question we get asked quite a lot, and it's a fair question. I think as part of this project, we want to look specifically at women as an underrepresented group, especially older women. Our bodies change so much throughout our lives, and especially after menopause hits, and we just want to make sure that we're doing a service to these women, because we're all going to age at some point, hopefully. And we want to make sure that these women and anyone that will be aging is supported in physical activity. I don't know if you guys want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely not ruled out for the future. I think it's important to represent all groups. Women are going to be first this time, and I think that's how we're approaching it. And there's also so many different, like Clara briefly mentioned, there's so many different events in a woman's life. With childbirth, your feet change drastically because you have hormones that relax your ligaments. So your feet actually can grow significantly. Well, they don't grow, they just flatten after having a child. And then throughout your life as well, throughout your life with menopause and all of that. And there's just so many different life events with women. So I think that's kind of as well why we've decided focus women first and men can come second.
Yeah, a lot of the rationale was around evidence of increased injury being a barrier and concern about injury. So helping with confidence by providing support is something that we're really keen to do. But also it's an awareness that the vast majority of equipment to support participation in sport has been designed for men, like in the wider world of design. And so, for example, the vast majority of footwear, it may be marketed towards women, the sports footwear, but it likely isn't based on data from women. As a researcher in biomechanics, I know the vast majority of studies that look at sports movement and use technology to inform how much cushioning you should have in a shoe and where it should be is all from men, and generally young men. And so it's not just we're doing women first and then we'll do men. There's a really strong rationale for looking at women in this environment and trying to provide support specifically for that group. Now, that doesn't mean some of the technologies we develop can't be applied to other populations, but I think it is a key thing that it isn't just one and then the other. There's a strong rationale for looking at this population because of the lack of support and lack of research in that area to date.
Yeah, I suppose that there's an element of it where the participation through men can be more to do with the maybe social factors and things as opposed to the biomechanical, because they already have the products that fit them, because historically design has been biased towards men in a number of fields, medical, car design, everything. So generally they should be able to participate in sports for longer because they've already got the equipment afforded to them to do that. So it might be a different kind of aspect that needs researching in terms of how you get men to participate for longer in sports, as opposed to creating these new innovative products that fit this need that hasn't been met yet.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. And, you know, women obviously do spend a lot more time on their feet, don't they? So everybody, yes. I think we've got a question. Yeah?
Hi, yeah. Coming back to the question about how the collaboration came about, there was obviously like a bit of serendipity in there, and there was some pre-existing trust, which is obviously set you guys up for some success, and I think that's great. I think one of the barriers we see we've heard from some really great like small community organisations and startups today, but one of the barriers for them is seeking out those collaborations. And so what that often might mean is that you kind of end up on like a tunnel vision, let's focus on impact or being commercially sustainable or whatever else it might be. For you guys as independent organisations, what's the best way to reach out to you, given that I guess the fact you're sitting here suggests that you're interested in further collaboration or further opportunities for collaboration? So what's the best way to get in touch and actually, I suppose, get a response and get the wheels turning?
Yeah, I think especially for the funding that we applied to, which was the UKRI Design for Aging, the best thing that was done was that there was a platform to interact and find people, and that's how we found Exeter. So that for us was really key, because we were able to have conversations with many different companies and then, you know, connect the dots in a way. But yeah, it's a very valid point, because sometimes it's very hard to know how to reach those companies. For us at Chimera, we're very open to collaborating. We're not precious about doing everything on ourselves. We actually think there's a lot more value in working with other companies that can do what we can't do, and they can fill those gaps. So the best way is to contact us through the website, through LinkedIn, through social media, or however that works.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I think to a certain extent sometimes depends on timelines, and is the time right? Like, does the company have, you know, do they want to bring on more personnel in that time and in that moment and stuff like that as well? So I think just balancing those timelines is important. But I mean, most of the time, IDA Sports is also still considered a startup, but like quickly growing. But most of the time, I'd say startups are open to that kind of stuff, because the goal is to survive, you know, and make changes in the atmosphere, in the environment of sports as well. Yeah.
And we're all here to talk to.
Yeah.
I actually think that's a really great point around timelines, because, you know, the amount of small businesses I talk to who actually don't understand when the time is right, because obviously you want to grow as fast as you can, but you have to understand that that time might not be right for you as a company. So yeah, it's a really, really good point. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I just want to come back to the general, like, some people don't really. Sorry.
You can't get the staff. You can't
ask the man whether he wanted to say something, and he said no.
Well, sorry, it's my fault. It's my fault. There's a man from. I actually want to make the point about the question that Helen asked about women in innovation, or not women in innovation, but actually focus on the female market. I think it's a bit of it's a valid point. You obviously asked it a lot. You know, the question is with women, post-menopause, the activity thing, it's a huge opportunity for you. There's been a recent funding, private sector funding, I think Health and Her, which is the post-menopause website, which is particularly, I think there's about £3 million of funding to look at that market. Go with the market, embrace it, fly with it. Don't, men are stupid. They'll pay £200 or £300 for a pair of trainers because they think they can run a second faster when they're doing a park run or something. Women don't do that, and the consumer psychology around this is absolutely fascinating.
It's completely different as well.
They're not going to. Oh well, I'm not going to spend £150 on a pair of trainers. Well, possibly you should do, because it'll actually mean that you're going to be fitter, healthy, and everything else. And that again comes around to the perhaps the potential in this room that I'm not seeing, or in this conference, is bringing it all together and having that discussion about where the next steps are, where we're going to be, post-funding, post-everything else. And we all should be, we're all living longer, the 100-year life, you know, when do we start making a change? 100-year life starts at 0, moving all these things forward. So I'm just, go with it, be women proud and all that type of thing. Yeah. Cheers.
So I wanted to make a point about, I mean, women will spend £200 on a pair of shoes. The problem is that the right pair of shoes has not been available. Once it becomes available, we'll spend that money.
And we hear that so much. We ask, okay, how much are you spending typically for your footwear? And they'll say like maybe 70, 80. I mean, it ranges, but for example. And then I say, all right, say I give you a shoe that's the perfect comfort, perfect fit. You know, it's not squeezing at that forefoot, and it looks cool, all of that. And they say, oh, probably double, maybe triple, you know? And so like that shows, sometimes you ask them, how well does your footwear fit you? And they'll say, oh yeah, it's a 9 out of 10. Like, yeah, it fits pretty well. But then when they answer that question saying, I'd pay twice or 3 times as much, I'm like, well, that's showing me something else. So, and so much too, they'll say, as long as it's comfortable, and they don't even focus on the design because they've never been able to. It's comfort first, or support, and then design is last.
I think we've had one of the focus groups, ladies that actually said that once you find the perfect pair of shoes, you can feel 20 years younger.
Yeah.
And that goes to show like how important it is.
I was in I was in podiatry, did a lot of podiatry conferences in the 90s, mid-90s, early 2000s, and there was a big change into the consumer market for people like Hotter Shoes coming in, and the danger was everything was beige. I used to sell materials for bespoke footwear, for surgical orthopedic footwear, and everything was beige or grey. I think I sold about, I once say I had 17 different colours of beige and grey, because that was it. That's changed now, and if you look at the Hotter Shoes are quite interesting because they just have big VC funding from to 55 plus, something Unbound Group. They're looking at the model changing, but they're not leading it, which is frustrating. So niche, and you're not niche, I'm sorry about that, but niche product, you've got the potential there to go for it. Anyway, to leave you.
I mean, I just want to ask, just want to pop a bit of a question in there around pricing. So obviously, women who live, you know, have low incomes, actually £70 for a pair of trainers is just beyond them completely. So is that something you think about? I mean, yeah, I'm guessing you do, but it'd just be good to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, pricing is something that we're still figuring out, and that we want to kind of look into in a deeper way that we haven't been able to do yet. But it's definitely something that we need to take into consideration because we can't, you know, we want to create a service and a product that is accessible for most people at least. So it's a very good point, and it's something that we'll be working on in the future.
Yeah, it's a really difficult conversation because you can't please everyone, and when we're starting this product as well, we want to break through and be creating this product to lead. So, you know, other companies can also produce this stuff. We're smaller scale manufacturing, so at the beginning it might not be where we want it to be, but hopefully by making waves in the market, we can then create that opportunity to get that more accessible price point as well. I don't think it's always going to be perfect, available for everyone at the beginning. It's going to take time and effort to get there, but I think by doing it first, you can make waves in that market as well. So I think that's very important. And then I think there's creative ways kind of to become more accessible as well. Like IDA has opportunities already with football clubs where, you know, you can have a promo code, and then if you like buy more boots, then money from that funds into the club and stuff like that. So like having creative opportunities like that would be great ways of doing that when, you know, manufacturing and stuff might be your limiters at the beginning as well.
And I just, I know Mark's put a question on Slido here. Great collaboration. How do you manage your funding applications?
Yeah, so it's actually, I write the funding applications for Chimera, so as well as managing projects, I also manage funding. And sorry, repeat the question again so I don't miss the...
I mean, I think it was just around how you manage your funding applications, and it's all down to you, basically. That's what you're saying.
So for Chimera...
I think, you know, at the point, I've got to wrap up now, or have I got 2 seconds? I think it's knowing where to go as well for funding, isn't it? You know, being signposted to the right place. Right, yeah, I've got to wrap up. That's been really interesting. I've really enjoyed it, way more than I thought I was going to. Not as prepared as I should have been, but anyway, no, really interesting. And just one thing I'd really like to say without sounding really patronising, it's just fabulous to see young people doing things for older people, which sounds really, I know it sounds like a trite cliche, but actually this is what we need. This is what older people, this is what I need, basically. I need young people to be designing fantastic things, but actually designing things for older people. So the older people are right at the heart of what you're doing, which, yeah, it's really great. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.